One of the ways I follow my enthusiasm is by reading a lot. And once a month, I come here and share the books I've been reading with you. This month is a little crazy because I tried a crazy new experiment. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm, episode 255 with me, Tara Swiger. Usually I help you work on your business and your mindset around building your business. And we talk about things like loneliness and shame and how it feels to be running a business and time and how to balance it, marketing and profitability. But once a month, I come here and share what I'm reading with you, both the novels, the nonfiction, the biography. And this month I've got a big list because I got a little crazy. So at the beginning of the Lent season, around Fat Tuesday, Ash Wednesday, I started thinking about something I'd heard a while ago about someone who decided to read 40 books in 40 days. And the Lenten season is 40 days in between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday. I thought, that's crazy. At the beginning of last year, I read the book Tolstoy in the Purple Chair, and in that, a woman heals from grieving by reading a book every day. And she shares the book she read and how it helped her through the grieving process. She had lost her sister and she was grieving, and apparently she had the resources to just completely take off work for a year and read a book a day and also blog about the book every day. So she started a book website, and it's kind of been with me ever since then. And so at the beginning of, I guess it was at the beginning of March, right around the beginning of this season, our foster honey went home, our 2-year-old little friend who had been with us for 3 months. And I thought, this is something I can't do when I'm parenting a 2-year-old. And it's also something that could help me kind of process and heal through that part by giving me something I really like to do that I can't do much of when I'm parenting. And that would just be reading everything I can get my hands on. So I decided to try it. And as of the recording of this, it is not yet Easter. So I still have 5 days left and I've read 31 books. So since the beginning of March, I've read 31 books in about 30, I should have looked this up before I started, in about 34 days. So I'm not going to talk about every single book here. I talked about some of them last month in the March What I'm Reading episode, but today I'll cover some of my absolute favorites. We're not going to go through all 40, but I'll talk about some of my favorites. We're going to start with nonfiction and then we'll talk about fiction. Both were so good this month. So just last night, I finished the autobiography of Gabrielle Union called We're Gonna Need More Wine. Oh my gosh, this is so much better than a regular celebrity memoir. Gabrielle, who you might know from her episode of Friends, or she's guest starred on a million different shows, including Saved by the Bell, The New Class, but like most significantly, if you're around my age, she was in Bring It On. She was the head cheerleader of the other group in Bring It On and is amazing. She's been in a lot of other great movies, but that's, like 10 Things I Hate About You. She talks about her experience with the 10 Things I Hate About You cast, which is excellent. But mostly, this isn't like other celebrity memoirs where they talk about just famous project to famous project and all their famous friends. She really talks about her life growing up as one of the few Black kids in an all-white neighborhood in Northern California. She talks about going back home to Nebraska, where she was reunited with her large African-American family and how different the cultures were and how she had to code switch as she went back and forth. She talks about a lot of the troubles with growing up and liking boys and learning to use a tampon for the first time, which completely had me cracking up. It is not that far from my own story. And she also talks about her sexual assault. She was raped in her 20s, early 20s. She talks about that experience, how it affected the relationship she has. One of the most moving and gripping chapters is when she talks about sending her stepsons out into the world as young Black boys and the fear that she has around that. And one night in particular, they went walking through their very safe, very wealthy neighborhood to a friend's house and how she was gripped with fear, and how her and her husband went out looking for the boys and were passed by a police car, and they, like, it is such a true and scary story. It really helps you live inside what it would be like to go through that. And so if you, as I am, are expanding the voices that you're listening to and that you're paying attention to, and you want to learn what it's like to live other experiences, and you're trying to diversify the books you're reading, I cannot recommend this book enough for what it's like to be in a woman's body, what it's like to be in a Black body, what it's like to be an American, what it's like to be a celebrity a little bit. And it's just so good. I read it in a day. I absolutely loved it. Now, not all these books did I read in a day, but this one was one that was just amazing. So it's We're Going to Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. Go read it. It's so good. The other nonfiction book I really wanted to talk about that is part of my diversifying the voices that I listen to is The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the cover. It is all about body acceptance and body love. The subtitle is The Power of Radical Self-Love. And what I wrote in my Goodreads review is that this is the most radical book I've ever read about body acceptance, because it is not just about sizeism. It is also about ableism and racism and ageism and the gender binary and sexuality, and how all of that comes back to body shame, and how we're told that there's only one kind of right default body, and what that does to our psyche if we, as there's so much body diversity in the world, just like there's so much diversity amongst nature. And when you limit what is the good and the right body, what it does to our psyches and our communities and how we treat each other and how we can heal from that. So she doesn't just talk about the impact of it, which she absolutely does, and how body shame spreads like a disease throughout our society, through advertising, and also through how we talk to each other and how we feel about each other. But she also talks about how to heal it. So one of the things that really stuck with me is she talks about the 3 pieces you need to come to. Pieces being P-E-A-C-E. So the 3 pieces. She talks about becoming at peace with not knowing, at peace with difference, and then at peace with your own body. Because you cannot show love and acceptance to other people when you don't feel it about your own body. So this book struck me at just the right time, not only because I'm thinking about body acceptance and diversity and accepting a diversity of bodies and experiences in the world and learning from them, but also because as a foster parent, my family changes shape all of the time. And a lot of foster families don't, quote unquote, match. They don't look like each other. A lot of adopted families don't look like each other. And I'd really been thinking about what that means to operate in the world, how to operate in the world where people will ask you questions because of this having a peace with not knowing. People say stupid, careless things because they want to know. They want to understand. They want to understand, are those your kids? Are those all your kids? Those kids don't look like you. What does your husband look like if those kids look like that? That question is one that families who don't match have to deal with a lot. Even if they're your biological kids, but they just don't look like you. Or people don't think that that skin tone could come from you. And it's because that they're uncomfortable with difference. They're uncomfortable with families that look different than what in their head a family should look like. And they're also uncomfortable with not knowing. So this also comes down to asking people where they're from. You're not from here, are you? Where are you from? I get that just as a northerner living in the South. I can't imagine if I had some accent that was even more unrecognizable to people. That's something that we're talking about a lot in the Instagram community, is people othering you, making you feel like you don't fit in and you don't belong someplace by asking you questions, trying to nail down how exactly you're different because they don't understand. Now that's a really normal human desire, is to understand, but part of accepting other people and living with the natural diversity of the world is being comfortable with not knowing, making peace with not knowing. With not knowing if that mom who comes in with 4 kids, if they're all her kids. With not knowing if that family who doesn't look like the configuration of a family in your head is a family, or maybe they're just friends. It's okay for you to not know. It's okay for you to not know where that person's accent is from or where their family is originally from. It's just okay for you to not know. If your highest goal is acceptance and showing love and showing, by acceptance I mean like an invitation into your community, then you don't want to do things that other people, that make them feel like the other and like they don't fit in and like they have to explain themselves. So she has a really great explanation about the peace with not understanding. That's what it is. Not knowing, not understanding. We must make peace with not understanding. Understanding is not a prerequisite for honor, love, or respect. I know very little about the stars, but I honor their beauty. I know virtually nothing about black holes, but I respect their incomprehensible power. When we liberate ourselves from the expectation that we must have all things figured out, we enter a sanctuary of empathy. And then she talks about that it doesn't mean that you're not curious and that you don't ask questions and you don't learn more. You just make peace with the fact that you might not understand everything. And then when it comes to making peace with difference, she says we must make peace with difference. This is a simple perspective when applied to nature, but oh, how we struggle when transferring the concept onto human forms. The late poet and activist Audre Lorde said, "It is not our differences that divide us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." So you gotta get peace with difference, and then of course, peace with your own body, accepting your own body. The author says, your body is the body it is. The belief that your body should be some other body other than the body it is a likely reflection of your struggles with the first 2 pieces. As I said at the beginning of the book, you did not come to the planet hating your body. What if you accepted the fact that much of how you view your body and your judgments of it are learned things, messages you've deeply internalized that have created an adversarial relationship? Then she talks more about how we come to have that adversarial relationship. So I could go on and on about how I love this book. Get it? She has 4 pillars for working on radical self-love and self-acceptance, and she talks about the difference between confidence, self-confidence, self-acceptance, and self-love, which I love. I'm going to dive more into that in an upcoming episode or maybe for an exclusive video for the Starship. I think this is super important. I think this impacts so much of how you operate in the world is the acceptance you have for both yourself and your others. So read it. The Body is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. Now, I also read some kind of a less serious but equally inspiring nonfiction this month. One of them, which I listened to on audiobook, which I heartily recommend, super quick book, Dream More by Dolly Parton. So I actually used the Libby app to get this audiobook from my library for free. It had kind of a weight on it because a lot of people are wanting this book. It's an adaptation of I think a graduation speech that Dolly Parton gave at the University of Tennessee here in my state. And it's just inspiring and it's sweet. And I love Dolly Parton so, so much. She is so real and she's so hardcore and she's so driven and ambitious and unapologetic about being ambitious. Dolly Parton is my hero. So Dream More by Dolly Parton. If you don't know how amazing she is, read this book and you will fall in love. So another very powerful book I read this month, which was intense and took me a good week or 2 to get through, was First We Make the Beast Beautiful by Sarah Wilson. This book is about anxiety, and it's really her personal journey through anxiety. The title comes from a Chinese proverb about in order to conquer a beast, first you must understand it and make it beautiful. So she talks about making her anxiety beautiful, finding the strength in it, finding the usefulness in her anxiety. She talks about her kind of journey through coming to peace with her anxiety and her bipolar disorder and her OCD. And it's not like any other book about anxiety I've read. It's a little bit of research. It's a little bit of personal journey. I think it's best understood as just recognizing how someone else kind of put the pieces of their anxiety and their choices together to find meaning from it. And finding meaning in your own journey is super important to your own self-acceptance and growth. Really interesting look at that. One of the kind of principles that she comes to is the way to deal with anxiety is to sit with it, to stop fighting it, to learn the lessons it has to show you. And as I said to one of my friends, as I kind of came to that chapter, she was saying, like, I posted on Instagram, I liked the book. She was like, that book was amazing, wasn't it? Her and I are both in super uncertain times in our life right now. Her because of an issue with her parent, a health issue with her parent, and me because, as I sent to her, this book is amazing. I love that its conclusion is that you need to learn to sit with uncertainty and be content with sitting with uncertainty. A lot of anxiety comes from the intolerance of uncertainty. Like, you cannot tolerate it. And part of moving through the anxious feelings is learning to tolerate, and as she says, sit with it, uncertainty. And I said, I must have really needed to learn this lesson, because signing up for foster care is signing up for a masterclass in uncertainty. You are uncertain about so many of the basic pillars of your life that most people are just sure of, and kind of we don't think about being uncertain about how many kids do you have, or what ages are they, or in what order will you raise children, or what is the race or gender of the children, or what is their biological parental relationship. All of this is uncertain in my life, and I signed up for it, and I think it's because I knew that I needed to learn some real tolerance for uncertainty, because Lord knows it's teaching me that. So that is one of the main kind of foundations of First We Make the Beast Beautiful. So if that is something you want to read more about and you like reading people's personal stories, highly recommend this book by Sarah Wilson. You might recognize her name because her other book is I Quit Sugar, and it was like a New York Times bestseller. She does talk a little bit about how sugar affects anxiety, but it's nothing like her other books. Very personal, very deep dive, very stream of consciousness. So First We Make the Beast Beautiful by Sarah Wilson. Then I read two books that were like collections of essays that were fun and just right up my alley. Basically books about books. So I'd Rather Be Reading by Anne Bogle is a series of essays about the reading life. I read it while sipping cups of tea and healing up from a cold while sitting on my couch, and I accidentally put the book down right next to a wet tea bag, and so I now own the book to buy it from the library, which I'm very happy about. It's a very cute little beautiful book with a beautiful illustration, and it's just a lot of essays about the reading life and how we find ourselves in books and how we find ourselves reflected in books and how books can bring us peace and growth and basically all of the things I'm always talking about in these What I'm Reading episodes. And then the next book about books I read was Well Read Black Girl by Glory Adeem. This is actually a collection of essays all by different authors of color, women of color, who talk about their first experience seeing themselves in literature. For sometimes it's the first time they read a novel whose central character was a black girl. Sometimes it is about finding themselves reflected in, it might be the first book they read about a black character, but is the one that was most like them. Or a character, and I know we've all had this experience, where they say or put into words something that we felt and haven't found the words for. So it's great. It's amazing. It has amazing contributors like N.K. Jemisin, whose books are on my to-read list, Tayari Jones, who wrote An American Marriage and Silver Sparrow, two of my most favorite novels, Jessamine Ward. They're just a lot of women authors talking about where they found themselves reflected in the books that they were reading. So the subtitle is Finding Our Stories, Discovering Ourselves. The book is Well Read Black Girl. The editor and the introduction is by Glory Adeem. She also runs the Well Read Black Girl Twitter account and Instagram account, which I cannot recommend highly enough if you're looking for diverse books by a bunch of different kinds of voices than maybe you've ever read before in all different categories and genres. So Well Read Black Girl by Glory Adeem. If you love books and you love finding yourself in books, go read it. Next up, I'm going to talk about some of the fiction I read. I read some great novels this month. First, My Sister, the Serial Killer. I wish I had kept this book from the library just so I could show you the cover. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching in the podcast, you're not seeing any of the covers, but it has the most beautiful art on the cover. It's by Oyinkan Braithwaite. She's a Nigerian author who, the book is set in Nigeria, but kind of with no intro. You're just in it. You are just in the community. You are in this family. You are in with a sister who is killing men that she's dating, and you are looking at it all through the eyes of the sister who is basically her cleanup crew. You kind of don't know what's going on, and as the story unfolds, it's kind of a mystery. It's kind of a psychological thriller. Is she going to tell on her sister? Is she not? Are the ties of family stronger than the pull of her own moral or ethical center? Or is her sister the serial killer actually acting very ethically because the men in her life that she is cutting down might deserve it? As it unfolds, it is a lot about gender relationships and the man being the head of the household, and how women who live in societies like that can feel and fight against it in some, very like over exaggerated ways in this story. Super fun, super funny. My Sister the Serial Killer, it is getting a lot of praise. I feel like it's very buzzy right now. I had to wait for it for a long time from my library, so as soon as I got it, I read it in a day. So fun, especially if you like psychological thrillers that are also like fun and funny. In that same vein, actually all the novels I'm going to talk about are in that same vein, are Give Me Your Hand by Megan Abbott. I have just heard Megan Abbott recommended a lot for people who like suspense and psychological thrillers, especially ones that are set, that are about female friendships and told from a woman's perspective. And this one definitely is. I'm not going to say more, except for that I am going to say more. It's a really great look at the kind of female friendship you get into when you're 12, 14, 16, that super intense. We are, me and my best friend called each other kindred spirits after Anne from Anne of Green Gables and her kindred spirit Diane. We were so tied up in each other's lives and each other's problems and each other's drama. And of course, because this is a suspense thriller, you're not sure what the drama is, but it is serious and it follows them into adulthood. And when they reconnect in adulthood, there's like this strange control power dynamic at play with these two childhood girlfriends, and you're not sure where that power differential is coming from. And I was in a friendship like this with this weird power differential in my teen years, and so I found this totally thrilling. Obviously, my life was not nearly as dramatic as this story, but I'm looking forward to reading more by Megan Abbott. So that was Give Me Your Hand by Megan Abbott. And the other novel I wanted to talk about this month is Foe by Ian Reid. This is creepy. This is creepy and you don't know why. The chapters are super short. They're like a page or two, and you just keep turning the page because something is wrong in this farmhouse in the middle of nowhere in the near future, and you don't know what it is. And this guy keeps showing up and telling them that one thing is going to happen, but the narrator is an unreliable narrator, and also he doesn't quite believe what he's being told. But as this unreliable narrator is narrating, you realize that he seems to be missing a lot of the signals his wife is sending him about something that's going on under the surface, and you don't know what it is. And you don't really discover what it is until about 3/4 of the way through the book, and then you think, okay, I know what the twist is, but oh, there's another twist, and then at the last page, there's a final twist that's like... So it's kind of sci-fi suspense. It's set in the near future, kind of apocalyptic, but not like Hunger Games level apocalyptic or violent. There's nothing violent that happens, just a creeping sense that something's wrong. So if you don't like gore, you don't like violence, you don't like people getting hurt, but you like that creepy sense that something's wrong, read Foe, that's F-O-E, by Ian Reid. I will, of course, link all of this up in the show notes. So if you want to check out anything I've talked about, or you want to see the other books that I read this month that I didn't talk about, my Goodreads is linked up. The Libby app, which I love, that I use to get books from my library on my Kindle or audiobook, is linked up. You can find all of that at taraswiger.com/podcast255. That link will be wherever you're listening to this, whether it's on iTunes or it's on YouTube. If you enjoy hearing about what I read and you want to share with me what you're reading, I would love to hear it. Share this podcast with others by leaving a review on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment telling me what you're reading. If you're not watching on iTunes, come over to Instagram. I'm at Tara Swiger. I use the hashtag Tara Loves Books to share all of the books I'm reading. I also share on Instagram stories almost a book every day or two. So make sure you're watching my stories over there. I'm at Tara Swiger, and you can always use the hashtag Explore Your Enthusiasm to connect with me and other listeners to the podcast. I would love for you to share with the hashtag Explore Your Enthusiasm. What are you reading this month? And have you ever done a crazy reading challenge like 40 books in 40 days? Tell me. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you a book-filled month.